Now let's talk about the Notre Dame defense, Vince. This is the side of the ball that to me is the complete opposite of what we just talked about, in that there's not as many concerning questions.
Sure.
At least not as many across the board. There's some concerning questions. I guess it's almost like we're kind of taking this side of the ball for granted. And we've had a couple comments and questions here from people. Brian Chisanik says, I keep hearing from the national media that Notre Dame will take a step back in 2021. I think the D-line will elevate the defense and the offense will be more explosive. Should I tamper my expectations of 11-1? I have two bits of advice for Brian. Number one is stop listening to the national media.
They have no idea what they're talking about.
None.
Sorry. Because what they're doing is they're looking at how many guys from Notre Dame are in the NFL draft process right now, right? And how could they possibly bounce back after losing all of that talent, right? But they don't understand. They don't understand Marcus Freeman, number one. Number two, they don't understand the kind of talent that's been sitting on the bench at Notre Dame this whole time. And they don't understand the fact that Notre Dame is hopefully adjusting their offensive philosophy a little bit. So the national media, they just don't know enough. And it's no knock against them. They have to know about 120 different teams, right? So I get it. But from a record standpoint, maybe they take a step back. Let's just say that they do.
Yeah, I mean, they may not go undefeated in the regular season.
Right. I'm still not impressed by this schedule, to be honest with you. This is a very, very workable schedule for Notre Dame. And they might, let's say they're not as strong of a team overall. They could still go undefeated, right? I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. But if you tell me that Notre Dame goes 10-2, I'm going to have a hard time picking out which two games they're going to lose, for going into the game. Now, obviously, you see the game play out. You're like, okay, well, that's why. Or if there's injuries or whatever the case may be. But, man, I would have a hard time picking out which two games those are going to be. They should be favored in every game they go into this year. I'll just say that.
Yeah, name me the team that has a better roster than Notre Dame. And let's not forget, we saw the same thing in 2017. How's Notre Dame going to replace Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson and Durham Smythe and all these different players, that Josh Adams and all these different guys, and it's like, well, they went 12-0 the next year, and in 2011 it was how are they going to replace Harrison Smith and how are they going to replace Michael Floyd and Robert Blanton and Darius Fleming and Kerry Neal and Ian, all these guys, and then they went 12-0 the next year. I think what happens is the national media consistently underrates Notre Dame's talent. We saw it last year when everybody's shocked that Chase Claypool did as well as he did at the combine. And I'm like, well, did you not watch his film?
Right.
Because you shouldn't have been shocked if you watched his film. And I think defensively to me is where there's I think there's too much emphasis placed on recruiting rankings when it comes to projecting the next team, because they're not concerned about Alabama and Ohio State losing a ton of players because they rank in the top 3 in recruiting every year. Well, there's a reason that Notre Dame consistently finishes 10-2, 11-2, 12-1 the last 4 years, because they're recruiting guys like Isaiah Foskey, who may not be a highly ranked player, but you and I knew when we watched the film, this dude's a beast, right?
He'll be highly considered.
You and I see the film. Yeah, exactly. And so I also think, to your point, the schedule isn't, but I think the biggest thing for me is I have an expression that I've used, and I'm just really enjoying making up stuff as we go with expressions wise. But I say, look, it used to be defense wins championships, but now it's defense gets you to the show, and the offense has to win the championship. But the whole point about why I think Notre Dame is going to be better is because the defense is still going to be really good. Sure. The defense will still get you to the show. Now, whether or not you can compete when you get there is going to be determined by the offense. But
absolutely,
when I look at this Notre Dame football team, I say, and you compare it to, again, they don't play Ohio State in the regular season. They don't play Alabama in the regular season. They don't play Clemson in the regular season. They don't play Georgia in the regular season. All these teams, everybody's like, oh, these teams are so good. I saw one of these dudes from ESPN, which has just become embarrassing in its coverage of college football, to be honest with you. Some guy had Iowa State ranked 4th in the preseason poll. Name me a human being with any common sense that's going to say, yeah, I like Iowa State's roster better than Notre Dame's roster. Wow. I mean, it's just it's one of those F&P plus
and it's clickbait
nonsense. Stuff. It is. And Notre Dame is, to me, should still once again be a top 10 team. They should still be minimum 10-2, which again is a top 10 team. And they are a team that should still, if they can catch a couple breaks, a couple guys develop, is still have a shot to go into November as a team that is in contention for the college football playoff.
Absolutely.
Now, will they make it again? Don't know. I don't think the standard is it's a failure if they don't make the college football playoff. I'm not one of those people. It's is your program continue to improve, and are you then putting yourself in position that in 2022 you're able to then go make that run?
Is when the schedule is brutal. So
right.
there needs
to
be
returning a lot of dudes. Exactly.
Of course. Yeah.
Exactly. So to my point to Brian is just don't worry about what the national media says. It's become less about analysis and more about, effect and clicks and those type of things. Should you tamper your expectation of 11-1? No. This is the 12th year of Brian Kelly's tenure.
No,
they have a lot of talent coming back. They've recruited very well in recent seasons. This roster is to the point where if they go less than 11-1, it needs to be because some team is way better than you thought, which could happen. That happens sometimes,
for sure.
And we may look at USC and be like, they're not, but then USC has this dream magical season, and all of a sudden, they're a wonderful team and they beat Notre Dame by a field goal or something like that. That could always happen. You could play a team in a horrible weather condition where it neutralizes this,
NC State a few years ago.
Right. Where it just completely neutralizes your talent advantage. There's all types of things that could happen. But to me, minimum 10-2. And if I'm saying minimum 10-2 to Brian's point, then you shouldn't tamper an 11-1 expectation because, again, that's the floor. Yeah. And a big reason for that is the defense.
Yep.
Because I'm very confident in the talent, the depth, and the coaching that Notre Dame is going to receive on defense. So to begin with that, Vince, what are the three big picture things you're looking for when you watch the game on Saturday?
These things, I guess, kind of bleed into each other, but I'm just excited to see this defense coached by a different person. And, whether that's Chris O'Leary, whether that's, Marcus Freeman, I just want to see the philosophy, right? I want to see the guys flying all over the field. And I realize this is more of a big picture than like a specific football thing, but I'm just excited to see, the play calls, the running around, allowing players to play and things of that nature that we've heard so much. I want to see it from an all-22 view, right? I want to see how the corner is filling for a linebacker. I want to, you know what I mean? Like some of those different things. I guess in a word, I want to see Freeman's defense. That's what I want to see. And I know that's real big picture, but that's where I'm at with number one.
I went a little bit more narrow focus with it. And to me, the first thing I want to see is what do the coverage looks look like? Are they going to play as much man as we think? What's the man going to look like? There's a lot of different ways to play man coverage. You can play press. You can play off man. You can play press and then bail at the snap. You're still in man coverage. You can play off and then come up and reroute and open and run. Will they be pure man? Will they be half man, half zone? Those are the kind of things that I'm looking to see. Is I think the coverage structure is going to look a lot different this year. That's probably going to be the most noticeable change. And that, to me, is the first thing I'm looking at. A couple things real quick here, Vince. I've seen people ask about this. DBZ asked, what channel is the game on at what time? So DBZ, look, irishbreakdown.com tomorrow at 6 a.m. I have a story that's going to be published. It's going to have a link to all of our spring content, but it's also going to have the time, the date, and the channel. But I'm also going to put a link to the channel. So it's on Peacock, but you can get it for free. I'll have a link and then directions on how to get Peacock.
Look at you
when you click on that. So make sure you check that out tomorrow. But back to the thing. Number two for me, Vince, is again, you went kind of big picture. So this is part of my number two. I want to see what the personnel packages look like.
Yeah.
Are they just going to be going from 4-2-5 to 3? There you go. To 3-3-5 with the same personnel?
Yes.
Are they going to do both of that? Will they also then mix up the personnel with different personnel to go into those different looks? Those are the things I'm looking to see.
Yeah, and I want to see them move in from a 3-front to a 4-front, and are they going to keep the defensive end, the Viper, in and put him in a linebacker? And what does the Rover look like? So yes, I had personnel packages basically for my number two as well. I want to see how multiple they can be with the same personnel. That's going to be fun to watch.
And my third is the pressures. I want to see what kind of pressure packages he brings. We may not see. It's kind of like offense. We may not see a whole lot in this game, and if we don't, I'm not going to be stressed about it because we've seen some stuff in practice that makes you think they're going to be aggressive. They may not show it in the game,
and I don't
but if they do, I would like to see kind of what those look like.
Yeah, my final one was linebacker play. I want to see, number one, who's lining up where. You know, are they taking linebackers off the field? Like I said, again, it's kind of personnel-ish and package-ish, right? So they kind of all go together. But I had written down linebacker play. I'm very interested to see, you know, are we going to see Drew White and Bauer out there together? That intrigues me to no end.
I'm curious if we're even going to see Drew White. Because he's been banged up so much.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly had made a comment that they're probably going to protect him and play it safe with him because they already know what Drew can do. Sure. So there's a chance we may not even see Drew White. But if he does play, to your point, I would like to see them do that. Before we move on to the next one, Jacob was with us the last show. Thanks so much for the daily content and making my days much better, man. Jacob, I can't tell you how much that means, man, because we put in a lot of hours. Vince is teaching and coaching, and he has 5 kids, and he takes breaks to do these shows. We love to do it, but it is a lot of work. And when we know that it's being watched and it's making an impact and people are enjoying it, that's why Vince is so moved by Connor's comments, because Vince can relate to that a lot more than I can, because we don't have kids. If my kids are getting annoying, I just let them outside to go to the bathroom or give them a bone to chew on for a little while, because my kids have 4 legs. Well, one has 3 legs, but the other one has 4 legs.
That's true, but that's the one my daughter loves the most.
She does. But yeah, we really appreciate that. And then of course, you're giving your hard-earned money to us to help support our channel.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sure, humbled and greatly appreciate it. But we do have more football to talk about.
We do.
3 players on defense, and I have a feeling you and I are going to be on the same page here. We did not talk about the 3.
We didn't get to the defensive side. Yeah.
What are the 3 players you are most looking forward to watching on defense?
Number 1 is number 7.
Okay,
Isaiah
number
Foskey.
1.
Yeah, I want to see him really take control of the starting position. Right, he's been kind of a spot player. Made an impact, no question. Right, but sometimes guys, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case with him, I'm saying in general, sometimes when now the pressure's on them to be the starter and be the guy, sometimes they can't step up, right? And I'm not saying we're going to get all those questions answered, but I love the fact that he's going to be on the field more often. I'm excited to see the impact that he has as a starter. So he's my number 1.
One of the questions we got during the show, Vince, is from P-Dub. Is the defensive line that good, or is the offensive line that bad? We're going to kind of get a sense of that, but to me, I think it's more about the defensive line being that good, and I think that Foskey's going to be a big part of whether or not that goes into the fall. Whether that continues against maybe more experienced teams, and when you get to when it really matters, Foskey has to step up and be the guy. He doesn't have to be like the 13-sack first-round draft pick this year, but he needs to at least have a Julian Okwara-esque, the 2018 season that Julian Okwara had. He needs to have 12 TFLs, 7-8 sacks, just be a good pressure guy, be disruptive. That we need to see from him this spring. And so that's why he's number 1 on my list. And your number 2 is?
You know what? I have Beau Bauer here. I'm excited.
We don't have the same 3. Interesting.
I am excited to see, especially with Drew White potentially being on the shelf for the spring game, which I don't blame Brian Kelly for in any way. He started, what he brings to the table. I want to see Beau Bauer with the opportunity to be the guy in the middle for an entire game. I want to see what he can do. I'm a big fan of his, and I want to see, especially in this kind of a defense where they're going to let him potentially blitz and kind of move around and all those different things. I want to see what 52 can do. I'm excited.
Well, one of the questions we got from Saul Rogers was, is there any way Drew White does not start in the fall? Well, there's a way. Beau Bauer dominates, and I've heard that Beau Bauer's had a great spring. And if and again, this is a situation where you have a first-time coordinator, right? He's gonna play the guys that he thinks is best.
I mean, he's gonna watch film from before, of course, but he has made a point, and he said it in his press conference. When he was talking about Houston Griffith, he said, "Look, my evaluation starts when I walk on the field." Right? He goes, and with you guys,
he said that to Tariq Bracy.
Was it Bracy? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember him saying it in a press conference. He's like,
but it applies to everybody.
It applies to everybody. That's exactly right. He wants to see what guys can do in front of him, and so, there's absolutely a chance that could happen.
I'd be shocked if Drew White's not starting game 1, but to your point, I could see if Beau Bauer continues to play well this spring, that eventually that Bauer's snaps become a little bit more than Drew White snaps by the end of the year. I could see that. My number 2 is Houston Griffith. I think he is one of the keys to the defense. He has to play well. He has to play well. And I'm curious to see how he's going to do, because he's kind of had to take a leadership role in the secondary this spring because there's no Kyle Hamilton.
Hamilton's not there. I mean, he's there, but he's not there, right?
And I'm curious to see how he does. Now, in the few clips we've seen him, I thought he's looked good. Even the 1 or 2 times he's gotten beat, he was in great position. It just required a great ball and a great catch, which is going to happen.
Right.
So I want to see him. And if we don't have the same number 3, I'm gonna be completely shocked.
Well, I had Houston Griffith as my number 3.
So you've given up on Cam Hart? You're no longer on the Cam Hart bandwagon? Is that where we're at now, Vince?
No, I am also the president of his fan club as well.
Well, where's the love?
Hey, look, my confidence level is so high. He didn't even make my list.
We're now at crunch time. We're getting ready to preview the Blue-Gold game, and you have no Cam Hart mentions. I'm just saying, you have lost your fan club presidency status. You've been demoted.
You're not wrong. That's fair. That is fair. He didn't spring to mind, which I don't know what that says. I think I'm going to need to lay down on a couch and have a conversation with somebody. But, No, I agree with you.
Cam's my number 3. Cam's my number 3.
I agree with you so much.
That's why 2 of the 3 guys on my list were secondary guys. Because to your point about like Beau Bauer, Beau's a really good player. I could see him playing. But if he doesn't, they're going to be fine because Drew White can play.
Absolutely.
The reason Griffith and Hart are at the top of my the number 2 and 3 on my list is because they both need in an ideal world for Notre Dame, they both step up and play well. They are keys to the secondary becoming good enough. Because here's the deal. As good as the defensive line is, it can get you to the show. But for them to take that next step, and this is something we talked about in a recent show, Vince, they have to be able to dominate in those big games.
Right.
But dominating against those good teams doesn't look like it does when you're playing Purdue or Florida State.
Right.
And we saw this in 2018 against Clemson. The defensive line whooped Clemson's butt all game long. There was about 5 or 6 plays where they didn't get pressure, and on those 5 or 6 plays, Trevor Lawrence shredded the secondary.
Plays.
And so no matter how good the defensive line is, to win on the big stage, your secondary has to perform well. And to me, Houston and Cam Hart are 2 very, very important parts of that. Whether it's the starters or Houston needs to be a starter, but in Cam's situation, whether it's a starter on the boundary, whether it's in the nickel, whether it's part of a rotation,
he needs to be involved.
They need Cam Hart to step up and play well, and I want to see how he performs against what I believe to be a pretty good wide receiver core. So that's why
I like it.
Position battles. There's only 2 for me. I couldn't really go much further than 2, and the reason for that is, Vince, is because I look at the defensive line, and it's like I don't think it matters who starts. Like
I'm with you there.
There's a bunch of dudes going to play.
Definitely didn't have that.
I only had 2 positions that I really had written down as position battles. What was your first one?
Well, I guess you could call this 2, but I had either corner spot because I don't think anything's a given at either corner spot going into the spring, especially with Marcus Freeman coming in and especially with, Tariq Bracy and the issues that he had at the end of last year. Clarence Lewis was a true freshman. I mean, played well for a true freshman. But again, there's nothing guaranteed. So it was the cornerback positions. Okay, who's going to step up? Are they going to use a corner in the nickel? So really, that whole cornerback room. Who's going to step up? Who's going to start? So that was my first one for sure.
I went there too. I want to see what Right now, I look at it and say it's a Clarence Lewis, Cam Hart, and then Tariq Bracy is kind of the 3 guys that will play.
Yep.
What's that going to look like? Is Lewis starting and Tariq Bracy plays in the nickel or plays in the rotation? Is Cam, or is Cam Hart starting, or maybe they move Clarence Lewis to the boundary because Cam Hart's not ready to be the guy and Tariq's playing great. There's so many question marks about it, but I want to see who steps up. And then is the hype about some of the younger guys that Brian Kelly brought up real? I have, again, this is where you got to be careful looking too much in the videos, because when I watch the videos, I see Ramon Henderson getting beat a lot.
Yeah,
but that could just be coincidence of the videos,
because
he could also be dominating. Yeah. We've seen maybe 10, 12, 15 clips of him this spring. He's had hundreds of snaps this spring. So it's just not indicative. And so you can't really make those conclusions. Brian Kelly raved about him, but is that real or not? We're going to see first chance to really see Ramon on Saturday. So, is that a real battle, or is it Cam Hart by default? if Cam Hart wins the job, I want it to be because he's that good, not because, well, who else are you going to play?
Right.
And that's where I get a little bit concerned. Yes,
makes sense.
this Connor, I love you, man. Down with ESPN, support independent media. Preach. And we appreciate your support, my man.
Yeah, no
very,
doubt.
very much.
I told you, he's in my Hall of Fame for comments.
Yeah.
I love that guy so much.
Yeah. So the other one for me is Will linebacker. And
really?
It's
okay.
It's not so much a position battle in that one guy's going to play over the other. It's who's going to start, and then is one guy going to be kind of the starter, and then the other guy is used as sort of like a role player, a niche player. Because one of the questions that we got up here was from John A1, how good will Shane Simon be in 2021? I think that's a big one, because if Shane Simon just locks down the Will linebacker spot, it's because he had a great spring.
Yeah.
So that's kind of partly why I want to see, is this a real battle? Is Shane locked it down, or is Mayer still pushing? Because the answer to that is going to tell us just how good that Will linebacker position is going to be. In a perfect world, Shane locks down the base defense Will linebacker job, and he can play all 3 downs. That then frees you up to use Maris as sort of like a missile.
Yeah.
When Maris is in the game, he's going to attack.
He's coming.
And you can be more of a niche player.
Sure.
That to me is the ideal situation for me. And then maybe some times when we always talk about, putting Drew White and Beau Bauer on the field together. Well, what about some scenarios where you want to get a little bit more athletic and you put Shane Simon and Maris Lewifau on the field together?
Absolutely. That's
something I'm curious to see more of this spring. But that only happens if those 2 guys step up. So that was the other one for me that was an intriguing position battle.
Well, and, I had a tough time coming up with a second one, to be honest with you, because cornerback has kind of occupied my brain trust for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I did put Rover there just because, I want to see Jack Kaiser just ball out. You know what I mean? Just and look, I love the local kid from Penn.
But he's not really injured. He hasn't played in this spring.
And he's injured, and
so it's not a position battle yet.
Exactly. He's not going to have an opportunity to really battle for that. And
so you just went. So basically, Vince, you went boundary corner, field corner, nickel corner is kind of your 3 position battle. Fair enough.
Pretty much. Because those, and the other reason is, and we've talked about this too, those positions are so important in Marcus Freeman's defense, because he's going to put those guys on an island. And so they need to be able, if they can't do it, he's going to come up with ways to protect them.
Yeah.
But in order for his defense to be what it needs to be, he's got to trust those guys, And so those are really huge positions right now. So it's definitely preoccupied me.
This is a little bit off topic, Vince, but it's kind of relevant to my Will linebacker conversation.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Could you imagine?
Nope.
Jaylen Smith playing his defense? Oh my Lord.
No.
He almost. I mean. That would be scary. That would be unbelievable. Very, very scary to see him playing it. Yeah, he would be a beast. And I think Manti'd be a beast in this defense too.
Yeah,
and I'm going to do an article this summer about why there's the need for a thumping middle linebacker is coming back, and I believe it's coming back. And I'm going to have an article about that this summer. But in the era of RPOs, I think it's important to have a thumper middle linebacker. But I'd love. But Jaylen would just be. I mean, he'd be. I mean, the only person that could ever slow down Jaylen Smith was Brian Van Gorder.
Yeah.
That's the only person ever that could tamp down his production ever. Freshman to watch, Vince. Freshman to watch. Who's your first freshman to watch? Keeping in mind that Gabriel Rubio's probably not going to play because he has an arm injury.
Yeah, I had 2. I had Ryan Barnes and Justin and Riley because they're competing at the cornerback spot, right?
You said Ryan Barnes and Philip Riley?
Philip Riley, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I had those 2 just because of what is going on at the cornerback position. Those are the 2. I'm hoping that they get a legit opportunity to go out. And again, they're true freshmen. I'm not expecting miracles here, but I want to see 25 and 15, see what they can get done, see what they can accomplish out there. And it'll probably be against, the number 2 wide receivers or whatever, but that's fine. But I want to see how they're progressing and how they're doing.
Could end up being against the number 1s if they do what Kelly kind of talked about, which is very well 1s versus 2s and that kind of thing. But yeah, they were my 1 and 2, Barnes and Riley. I just want to see how they're progressing. Yeah. My expectation for them was they would make some noise this spring, and then that would then spring them into the offseason where they would then make a jump and then battle in the fall. My 3rd is Justin Walters. He has flashed in some of those clips.
Safety, right?
a little bit further along than I thought, because he didn't play as a senior because of Illinois canceling football. He's number 20, and he has performed well to the point where, you know, he could be pushing for a role in that secondary by the time we get to the fall. Now, right now, I still think he's probably too far behind scheme-wise and all those kind of things, but that's not what the spring is for freshmen on defense. It's about make some noise, learn the defense, but then when you get that under your belt, then you can go into the fall and you've got those 25-plus practices to really focus on battling. So the three – and look, there's a theme here that we've kind of covered. There's a lot of secondary conversation in this defensive breakdown, because that's the one position to me that is the most problematic. Now, it's not going to hurt them against most of their opponents, but look, the way that USC runs their offense, it's hard for your defensive line to impact the game the way it will against a North Carolina who runs the ball so much.
They get the ball out so
fast. And they throw a ton. It's it's almost like 7-on-7 football to a degree.
Right. It is. You're right.
So you got to have guys who can cover when you're playing USC. And I know they lost Tyler Vaughns and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but trust me, USC is not going to be devoid of talented receiver.
Because they're all in their backyard. Right. I mean, they can recruit LA. You know what I'm saying. But yeah, they're going to have guys. They're going to have athletes.
Right. No North Carolina is going to have guys can spread the field. And then bigger picture, if you are able to go 11-1, 12-0 because your schedule's not great or you're just that good, you play Alabama, you play Clemson, you play Oklahoma or Ohio State in the playoff, you're going to have to be able to cover. We talked about this for the same reasons we discussed earlier. Look at the 2018 game. At some point in time, there's going to be plays where you have to be able to cover, and that leads to this question from Joe. You know, if you get to the Final Four, can Notre Dame play with the big boy football and actually be in the game and play with the other powers of the CFB? There's two things that are going to factor into that. One, does the secondary make the jump that we hope it can make? And then number two, it's offense. Can the offense score?
Can they score?
Front seven-wise, Vince, I'm not at all concerned about the front seven.
I agree.
I think Notre Dame has arguably the best safety in the entire country. But what do those other 3 to 4 secondary positions look like? That's the bigger question for me.
Yep. Completely agree.
Now, final 3 takeaways. What are the 3 things that you hope that we're talking about with the defense when we come out of the spring?
Well, I hope we're talking about how impressed we are with the depth defensively. And I know, we know what the defensive line is bringing to the table. We know what linebackers are involved, and I think there's depth there, to be honest with you. So I think we'll be talking about that. Again, it goes to the secondary. I'm hoping that those 2 freshmen we talked about, Riley and Barnes, that they're stepping up. And that we got some quality depth at corner. I'm hoping that Walter steps up, and you could say, okay, we've got some quality depth at safety, right? I hope we're talking about depth across the board on the defensive side of the ball, because that's going to make them that much more dangerous as we move forward in the season.
My number 1 is the defensive line as good as advertised? That's the one for me.
Do you think we're going to be able to figure that out, though, in this game?
Yeah, because I think you can evaluate a player's production independent, or their performance independent of the production. So if they're out there making a ton of plays, you can still tell whether Jason Ademilola is quick off the ball. You can still tell if Isaiah Foskey's enhanced his pass rush moves. You can still tell if Myron Tungavaloa is comfortable playing the defensive end, if Jason Ademilola has improved his game, if Riley Mills has made the necessary physical jumps that he needs to make, showing off the athleticism and those types of things. So yeah, I think we still can learn for the same reasons when you watch a kid playing in a high school film and he's better than everybody on the field. You can still evaluate what's his explosiveness like, what's his agility, what's his footwork, does he have loose hips, what is his technique, those types of things. So I still think there's plenty to learn. But again, if they don't dominate this game, that could be a thing where, okay, was it because they tamped down the pressures, they didn't turn them loose, or is it because maybe they're not as good as we're thinking, and it's just been more about the highlights have just been that good, and they're really they only make 9 good plays a practice, and they just happen to be all in the highlights. We're going to find out. And then number 2, Vince, we're on the same page here. I know we talked about this one, and that's certainty in the secondary. I hope that we're saying, boy, Cam played well, and the freshmen have promise, and DJ Brown's solid. Houston stepped up and balled out. Tariq's back to his old ways. He's Clarence Lewis. I hope all those things that we're hoping for in the secondary are what we see, and we're feeling good about it heading into the spring. or heading into the summer.
And that's my number 2 as well. I mean, that was I put cornerback stability. You know, are we going to get kind of an idea of where things are? You know, get a pecking order. You know, more so defined than what we think it is going in. And I stopped at number 2. I mean, those are honestly those are the 2 things that I'm really going to I want to be taken away from this game. I mean, I feel like I've got all the other answers.
Yeah,
so.
And back to what John said, kind of the point number 1 is, you know, in 2021 is the defensive line now the strength of the football team? I think it has a shot to be, and I think we need to be talking about that being true coming out of spring game. When you look at the talent at tight end and running back and linebacker and receiver, quarterback, there's a lot of really talented positions. Through all of that, we're talking about the defensive line is the strength of this football team, then I'm going to feel really good, because to me, a great defensive line is like a great offensive line. It can erase a lot of your other warts.
Sure.
If it's dominating, okay, yeah, you could have maybe completed more balls on the secondary, but you never had time because the defense dominated you. And that to me is one of those keys. But at the same time, Vince, I need to see that the linebackers have improved. I do think that's important.
Yeah.
I do. No matter how good the defensive line is, again, because if the standard is winning a championship, you know, look at the 2012 game, you know, against Alabama. I thought the defensive line held their own that game, but the linebackers and safeties played terrible in that game. So how many times did they miss, you know, one of the 2 running backs, whether it's either Lacey or the other, I can't remember the other big kid's name that they had. How many times did Zeke Motto or Manti miss those guys at the line of scrimmage?
Right.
Well, they were meeting them at the line of scrimmage because the defensive line had done their job.
Correct.
So when we're talking championship, we still need to see that the linebackers are able to make plays. And I think this is a defense that we talked about from day one. This is a linebacker-driven defense. And Marcus Freeman said it's driven by the defensive line, and I get what he's saying, and I don't disagree with it. But at the end of the day, and to win the like Joe mentioned, can they win on the big stage? The linebackers have to be better than they were last year. In an era of RPOs and teams spreading the field and all that kind of stuff, if you don't have great linebacker play,
you can't get sucked in and you can't bite on certain things. You got to
you have to make plays in space. You have to be able to make plays in the backfield. All those things are super important. So, and that is going to do it for today's show. Now, today is Wednesday. Tomorrow we'll have some preview stuff on the website about the Blue Gold game. Friday, as I said, we will have an article in the morning that has when the game is, what channel, what time. I will have a link to the Peacock Network, which is where the game is being played. So that'll be in there as well. We will it'll have instructions on how to sign up, because it is free. You do not have to. You do not have to buy the Peacock Network. If you are an Xfinity or Cox customer, you may not know this yet, but you already get premium access to Peacock if you just sign in Peacock with that account. So those are just some things that we'll have for you on Friday. We'll also have a sort of a written what to look for in written form for that game as well. We'll have a lot for that. Saturday, we will have a game day chat that we'll have at irishbreakdown.com. So make sure that you're signed up for the website, but through Discuss, because we'll have that forum. I'll have live updates. We'll have our game observations. I'll have that article after the game like we normally do on game day. And then when I get home from the game, we'll fire up the live stream and we'll talk about the game. I'll give my impressions. I want to hear all of your impressions. I want to hear comments, thoughts, questions, whatever the case may be, and we'll go there. So, Joe, just to answer that question, you can always do a super chat during the show. You can also sign up for a membership to irishbreakdown.com. I'm not really pushing the membership forum right now because we don't have a message board yet, and I want to wait till our message board is going on that. But you can always sign up to irishbreakdown.com.
Super chat would be the easiest way, I would say.
And that is $5.99 a month or $59.99 a year, and you also get access to you get the Sports Illustrated, the magazine, will be as part of that subscription as well. But I just haven't promoted that yet.
You
can find a link. I know you can find a link to the bottom of all of my articles if you want to do that. So absolutely. And Omar nailed it correctly. It's really not a game week without an Irish Breakdown preview. And I think he is 100% correct. And Omar, we always appreciate you being in the show, my man. Really appreciate that very much. But
Con's been awesome today, by the way. Yeah. I've really enjoyed watching some of the banter back and forth and some of that. It's been good stuff today. So thanks, guys.
D-Rock, obviously hit the like button and subscribe, hit the notification bell. And we actually had a question kind of come up here as we were getting ready to bow out of here. It's crazy how little Avery Davis comes to mind. Is it because we know what we get with him? I think
there's another level for Avery
Davis. I talk a lot about
Avery
Davis.
Yeah, I love him. I think that from what he's had to endure at Notre Dame, just from all the position changes and things like that, there is absolutely no reason he should still be here, other than the fact he wanted to make sure he got his degree.
And he's a competitor.
And he's a competitor, man.
It's just not a great story, though, Vince. I think this kid's a playmaker, and I think people are sleeping on him. And look, we kind of did too when we talked about the guys we're looking forward to seeing. To me, I think there's two reasons people don't talk about him. Number one is because he has played, and it's not one of these guys that, we don't know what Lawrence Keys can do, or we don't know what Braden Lindsey can do. And I think the other reason is because there's an expectation, and I know people that feel this way. Well, he is what he is. What we saw last year, that's just who he is. Right. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of room for Avery Davis to become a bigger playmaker if they're going to use him correctly. And so, but for me, it's more of, I just kind of take him for granted. I just assume he's going to make that jump and be a big-time playmaker. So maybe that's my fault that we don't talk about him enough, and we didn't in the show. But I've written a little bit about him. We've talked about him in past podcasts, Sean, where I think Avery Davis is going to be an NFL football player. I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round draft pick, but I think if he tests the way I think he's going to test next year, he's going to be drafted somewhere in the middle late rounds and be a really productive player. So, Vince, you're scouring through the comments. Do you see anything else that we need to? I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, we'll be back again on Friday, so we will have our Friday free for all podcast, which will be just Q&A. So we'll be ready to go. These last couple shows during the week are more about us kind of just doing our normal podcast, and then if there are questions, we'll sprinkle them in. The Friday free-for-all is going to be our traditional. You show up, you guys drive the content, you drive the discussion, you ask us the things that you're curious about. We could, I was thought about making it kind of specific to the Blue-Gold game, but forget it. It's going to be a Friday free-for-all. Yeah, we're going to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. Notre Dame football related, college football related, recruiting related, whatever the case may be. So, Vince, I think somebody asked you earlier too how your baseball season's going, so maybe we can dive into that next time too. Yeah, that sounds good. But let's maybe wait for that until after the doubleheader, because I think how the doubleheader goes could change Vince's mind about how the baseball season is going. So, and then Bobby, yes, it will be at 1 o'clock on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll start right around then. Vince will obviously be there for the first hour, and then he's got to get back to his duties. Fortunately for me, this is my full-time job, so I can stay the entire time. Last week, Vince, we went 2.5 hours, and there were still questions that I couldn't get to. Crazy. Just didn't have time to get to them. So it's so awesome, the community that we're building here. So we appreciate y'all being part of it. For Vince D'Addario, I'm Brian Driscoll. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will talk to you all again very, very soon.